I would like to spend some time trying to answer the question, what does the poem The Striders mean? The characteristic Ramanujan poem is a complex object, and The Striders is a typical example of Ramanujan's early poetry. This is one of the reasons why Ramanujan was never widely read, especially in India, unlike, say, Nizam Ezekiel. He was too intellectual, too academic a poet for the average reader. The Striders, like many a Ramanujan poem, does not have one specific set of meanings. Instead, it has several levels of meanings. I shall try to unravel them. First of all, The Striders is about the insect known in North America as the strider or the water strider or the Jesus bug. The poet has explained in his note that in New England the insect is known as the strider. So the first interpretation of the poem is that the poem is about the insect, the strider, and is a very detailed and very scientific description of the insect. The description is such that an entomologist or an insect specialist would be proud of it. A.K. Ramanujan seems to have written the poem shortly after he migrated to the United States. So, the second interpretation of the poem is that it is about the Indian American. I have already pointed out that Ramanujan used to claim that he was the hyphen in the term Indian American, the hyphen in the term Indo-American. The second interpretation of the poem, as I've already suggested, is that the poem is about the Indian American experience. Indians migrating to the United States receive something of a culture shock and find it very difficult to come to terms with their new social, economic, political environment. The Indian American survives in America with great difficulty, just as the strider walks on water. Both the Indian American in America and the strider on water carry out impossible feats. The third interpretation of the poem is that it is about the husband, the father, the family man. A.K. Ramanujan had a very complex relationship with his wife, Molly Daniels, whom he married twice and divorced twice. He also had a rather complex relationship with his children, Kritika and Krishna. On the whole, Ramanujan's family life was not idyllic. The poet feels that a successful family man achieves the impossible, and he is like the strider walking on water. The husband, the father, the family man, like the strider, walks on the water of family life. The fourth interpretation of the poem is that the striders is about the poet, especially the Indian poet in English. From the diaries of A.K. Ramanujan, it is clear that Ramanujan felt that the poet, especially the Indian poet in English, the intellectual, especially the intellectual who uses English, suffers a very severe isolation in India. You must remember that these entries were recorded in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. At that time, the literacy level in India was abysmal, and less than 3% of India's population could use English fluently. Ramanujan lamented his lot as an Indian poet in English and as an English using intellectual in India. Thus, it appears to him that the strider which walks on water excellently symbolizes the fate of the Indian poet in English, of the English using intellectual in India. The fifth interpretation of the poem is that the striders is about poetry. In order to be successful, a poem has to achieve something magical. And the strider is the perfect symbol for a successful poem. In real life, A.K. Ramanujan was obsessed with the writing of poetry and was always searching for poems to be written. Notice how the poem under discussion, notice how the striders opens and search for certain and search for certain. The poet is searching for poems, for successful poems. Here the speaker is searching for striders. The striders walk on water. The poem attains something magical, something miraculous. The poem achieves something magical, something miraculous, very much like the strider. The final interpretation of the poem is that the striders are nothing but compatriots of A.K. Ramanujan. A.K. Ramanujan migrated from India to the United States. He was a very shy person, a very modest person. a person constantly in search of congenial company, a person who frequently felt that he was small. A.K. Ramanujan, while writing the poem, was living in the United States. The Striders were also living in the United States, in the same area as lived in by Ramanujan. Thus, the Striders are compatriots of Ramanujan. The speaker looks around, searching for congenial company, and he finds the company he searches for in a swarm of striders. Ramanujan, who never had a colossal ego, probably was able to identify himself more with an insect than with a fellow human being. The striders are the neighbors of Ramanujan, the compatriots of Ramanujan, and he's very happy to join them because he has a lot in common with them. He is able to identify with them, and probably they offer him much better company than human beings.